Welcome to my Ark Nova Strategy Series video number 3. Today we're going to be talking a sponsors tier list. So this is a little bit more important than the animals tier list. Unlike animals, sponsors are definitely not created equally in this game. There are some that are very consistent and some that are very inconsistent. Not to say that any sponsors are unplayable, but there are some that are pretty close. So hopping right into it, we've got the Adventure Playground. So 3 strength sponsor for 4 appeal is just pretty solid all around. 4 appeal, no strings attached is pretty good. At 3 strength, makes it pretty easy to play. It's a good candidate if you have a marketing ability, so pay 3 money to get it down. It's very nice. Or if you upgrade sponsors, pairing it with another 3 strength when you have a sponsor strength of 6 is quite nice as well. And then combos with the rock tag could get even more value out of it. So solid all around. Its ceiling is not that high, but also its floor is not that low. So um, it's not going to win you games, but it is a solid point generator. Water Playground, pretty much the same card, but water tags tend to be a little bit more powerful than rock tags because they're more abundant, so you can often get more synergies with the water tags. Arcade, okay, it gets half the appeal with the possibility of making it up in some endgame if you maintain an appeal lead over your opponent, along with income for having high appeal. So it is another 3 strength sponsor. It doesn't get as much appeal up front, which I think hurts it compared to the playgrounds. And the fact that its income bonus is tied to appeal, which you are not going to have a whole lot of early game, I don't think the income bonus is that impactful. By the time you have 20, 30 appeal where you're really going to notice that income, that's probably going to be a drop in the bucket of the amount of income you're getting by that point in the game. And you may have more money than you need at that point in the game, really. So not quite as powerful as the playgrounds, I think. We have Archaeologists up next. This card can be absolutely broken on certain maps. Commercial Harbor, if you just spam out a bunch of times twos. Outdoor areas, where you can very easily get down 3 partner zoos without having to do an associate action for them and then getting the free worker out of that can be very powerful. Research Institute, at a glance you would think would be good, but it's really not. On that map, because if you have to grab a university to enable it because it requires a science tag, then you grab one with the bonus, you've still got the free uni space left, and you don't really need a 3rd uni that often on that map because it doesn't get you extra conservation points. And if you enable it with another sponsor that gives you a science tag, well, do you really have time to take your sponsor's action twice before you build? I mean, that's just kind of slow. So, but yeah, otherwise on other maps, it's pretty solid. It can enable you to rush up the reputation track really fast in some scenarios, or you could just collect a lot of extra 5 money bonuses, which is pretty solid. But it really loses its value if you pick it up later in the game because you may have already covered those spots. You may have already covered the good bonuses that you want to copy. So definitely has high upside, but it can also become fairly irrelevant if you find it later in the game. Hydrologist, solid all around. I'd say A plus. It's just very consistent, right? So you can get a lot of money if you play this early in the game. 20 plus money from placement bonuses adjacent to water can be very good for your income. It's also quite useful later in the game because if you have collected a lot of water tags, it can get you quite a lot of appeal, especially if comboed with Aquarium. This becomes a very dangerous card if you've already got Aquarium down. And the end game is very easy to hit as well. So that's a very easy to hit 3 points for the end game on top of appeal you may gain from playing the card. So I rate this pretty highly just because it is pretty much useful at any point you played it in the game, early or late. Same with Geologist. The appeal on immediate play is slightly different. It can have a bit higher upside because 3 appeal for per 2 tags can end up being higher, but there are less rock tags in the game, so it may be harder to hit that. But all the same reasons as Hydrologist, just solid all around, whether you play it early or late. Then we're going to get into the animal enhancers. So Baboon Rock, I would put a bit lower than the others just because monkey tags are a bit rarer. The fact that it requires 6 strength makes it a little bit awkward to play. But in general, these animal enhancers I think are very good because it just gives you a lot more flexibility in the game for scoring points. If it matches a base conservation project, great. That just stacks on a huge amount of efficiency if you're getting points from Baboon Rock and then also playing a Monkey's project later on. But even if it doesn't match, it just gives you more options to score points. It makes it so your opponent has to think about denying more things from display for you, which can really slow down their game if there are more cards that they have to think about denying from you. If 3 cards match the base conservation projects, and then there's also a monkey on there, they can't deny all of them. And so you're going to have a lot more options for cards that are going to be efficient for you. And that goes for pretty much all these animal enhancers. Penguin Pool, I would say one of the better ones. Birds are very strong. They have pretty strong abilities, and the perception and scavenge that they typically have helps you to potentially find more birds and continue chaining along that combo to just earn more and more points. So an extra 2 appeal per animal, very strong, with the upside of an end game if you are able to stack a lot. Same with Meerkat Den, very similar to Penguin Pool. I don't rate it as highly because, for the reasons the birds help you find more birds, and that's not quite the case with herbivores. Then you have Polar Bear Exhibit. It is for bears. Bears are pretty rare, but you do get that appeal whether it's you or your opponents who play the bear, which, this increases in value and higher player counts, obviously. If there's more players with the opportunity to play bears, you can get more points off of that. But also the fact that it has 2 tags makes it very powerful where species diversity is in play, either as a base project or an endgame, or sponsors that require diversity for their endgame points. This is a very easy way to get 2 tags for free, which is very impactful. Then you've got the enhancers that give other effects rather than appeal. Bard Owl Hut, by itself, not all that useful. It just doesn't give you points. The perception 2 per bird is nice. It can help you find more birds, but if it's only for the sake of Bard Owl Hut by itself, birds finding birds just for the sake of playing birds, it's not that great. But if you're finding more birds to get more value from Penguin Pool or more money from ornithologists, then this becomes quite good. And then also the 6 action strength also makes it a little bit more awkward to play. Then you have the Rhesus Monkey Park. It's okay. It's got a nice long shape, also like Bard Owl Hut, which can be nice for moving across the map if there are certain map bonuses you want to get to, which can be pretty nice. But again, the issue really is just it's in itself does not help you score more points. But X tokens can be good for the tempo of your game, but it also runs into the problem that monkeys are just a rarer tag in the game. Then you have Sea Turtle Tank. This one is not great. So the sunbathing ability, problem with that is that a lot of reptiles already have sunbathing, and so it doesn't really synergize well in that regard. You're just typically not going to have enough cards to make good use out of it. It can be nice if you have it in the first round. Typically, if you're going for a start where you're not holding on the hand size, and you take a card's action from deck, you're going to have extra cards you're not going to use anyways. And early game, that extra money is going to be more impactful than it is late game. Also, the shape of it is a bit awkward to get on your map sometimes, so that can kind of choke up your map if you don't plan for it well, which is a knock against it. You have Spotted Hyena Compound. So again, like the Bard Owl Hut, this can help you draw a lot of cards to find more predators. Um, but even by itself, if you're not having other predator synergies going, it does synergize with the fact that several predators have the pack ability, which scores you extra appeal for having more predators on the board. So by that fact, I rate it a bit higher because there is a good reason to be finding more predators when you have this. And once you have several down, that hunt can get a bit ridiculous, drawing 5, 6, 7 cards from deck. You're very likely to find more predators to keep that combo going. Or just in general, finding good cards to play, eagles, rhinos, sun bear, which can be really impactful for your game. You've got Okapi Stable. I do like this card a lot, but it is pretty situational. Um, having the opportunity for 3 actions that you can take with money can be quite nice, but you need to have the sponsors in hand. You need to have the money to be able to afford them. You need to have the herbivore tags to activate it. And so that's kind of a lot of conditionals to be able to meet. But when you can make use of it, it is very good for getting a lot of sponsors down, which can be very powerful. Then you have your animal money enhancers. Money is always good to have. Obviously, very strong cards in higher player counts because then they can earn you quite a lot of money. But they don't score you points, which I kind of value higher when you're looking for sponsor value. Um, and if they don't match a base concentration project, you know, there may not be a good reason to be playing, say reptiles if it's not matching a project and your opponent may just avoid them entirely. They may not have a good reason to play reptiles and you may just not get more than 3 or 6 money, which makes this a dud, kind of. Primatologist, same thing, but I would value it lower just because there's less monkey tags, less um, opportunities to get value out of it. Predators, I would rank the highest out of all of these because of that synergy with the Spotted Hyena Compound. Playing predators to find more predators keeps that chaining along so you can get a lot of value out of that. Herbivores, middle of the pack. Herbivores are decent animals. I like them better than reptiles. Then ornithologists, similar reasons to predators with the Bard Owl Hut, the perception, the scavenging can help you, activate that combo a bit more. Also, ornithologists, herbivores, benefit from the penguin pool, meerkat den, enhancing the points there. I guess primatologists does too, but it's still hurt by the fact that there's less monkeys in the deck. And you've got aquarium, right? So this is an excellent enhancer. So first off, the fact that it gives 2 tags for itself gives you 4 appeal right off the bat and gets you that much closer to the endgame 6 tags. The amount of water tags in the deck is relatively close to the spread of animal tags throughout the deck, so it does get similar value there in terms of the animal enhancers. I think the fact that it just gives you an extra tag head start is quite nice. And also, it can really stack value with base conservation projects no matter what's out there, just because any continent, any animal could also have a water tag, which stacks on itself. And then also the fact that there are 3 animals in the deck which have double water tags, which gives you even more value out of this card if you can find those. So excellent card for getting a lot of extra appeal. Cable car, quite similar, but there are a bit less rock tags in the deck, and there is also only 1 animal with a double rock tag, vice 3, so it is a little bit weaker than aquarium. But the nice long straight line can be positive if you want to jump across the map to get towards certain bonuses, whereas the aquarium shape I often find to be a little bit more awkward trying to find a good place to place that without ruining the mirror map. Basic research, this is okay. Getting a couple of free conservation points, I would say probably 2 conservation points is typical by the time you're approaching 25 appeal. And that's decent value, so 6 points And then also getting a science tag is nice to help you build towards a science combo if you have other sponsors on the horizon that are going to benefit from that. So I'll put it a little bit ahead of the playgrounds because I think typical value of 2 conservation points is a little bit more points. Although appeal does help with income, whereas conservation points do not. But conservation points do help you move up the conservation point track to get you those 5 and 8 CP bonuses. So it's a bit of a trade-off. Breeding, cooperation. I used to be a bit lower on these, but I actually quite like them more now. I think as I've grown as a player, I've become a lot more project heavy, project focused, and so I go out of my way a lot more to find myself in a position to get value um, out of these, using those cubes to do more projects, to win the races to the 5 conservation point version of base projects. And as we went over in my stats, I averaged, I think, like 4.2 projects per game. So quite often I am hitting this end game, which is another solid 3 points. I do think the partner zoo variant is a little bit easier to get. If you're going for a lot of projects, partner zoos help you out with that, and so that synergizes as well. Whereas science tags, um, typically to get to 2 science tags, you'll want the 2 rep uni with 1 tag, and then hopefully another sponsor with a science tag. Grabbing the double science uni doesn't always feel great because you're really only grabbing it for the tags, whereas the other universities which give you reputation have a bit more utility. Then diversity researcher. This is, I think, a pretty solid card. The synergy with rock and water tags is quite nice, so money up front can be a nice little boost. A potential for 6 appeal in the end game is quite nice as well. But the real strength here, I think, is the reason you want to upgrade builds in a lot of games. I think it's not so much to accelerate your game, but rather to remove constrictions. But Diversity Researcher pretty much gives you the flexibility to not encounter those restrictions. So I think this makes it much easier to get through your games without needing to upgrade build. You don't have to plan so carefully around where you're going to place large enclosures, where you're going to place things near rock, near water, near double water, and helps you leap across those rock and water obstacles to get to the map bonuses you want, which gives you a lot of flexibility in the game. So I like this quite a lot. On top of the fact that it has a science tag, again, science tag package combo value there as well. Talented communicator, I think it is quite good. Being able to grab an extra worker from a card and not having to take that as a project award or at your 2 conservation reward gives you a lot more flexibility in other options you can do in terms of upgrades and project rewards when you do those projects and reach those milestones in the conservation track. So I think opens up a lot of flexibility in your game, but it can be countered. If you get a worker advantage over your opponent, they can start pushing the break faster to make you um, not be able to get value out of that worker. But that's not always a bad thing. If you've got other powerful sponsors to also play, that's how really fast games happen is playing very powerful sponsors that get you a lot of appeal, a lot of value, while your opponent breaks for you to keep feeding you money to keep your game moving along very quickly. Engineer, I don't rate this very highly. I mean, it can be okay early game, when you're taking some weak build actions. If you just want to get out a couple of 2 size, 1 size animals in the first and second round, Engineer can be decent for getting out multiple small enclosures before you have the opportunity to upgrade build. It can also combo nicely with cards like Side Entrance if you want to get down several pavilions. But later in the game, I find that it's really just if you have an upgraded build, I typically would use it for building extra pavilions, and that's just okay. Map fill endgame though can be a good combo if you have a architectural zoo endgame, if you have side entrance, archaeologist, other cards that give you map fill endgame bonuses. So that's something to keep an eye out for if you see that card. Expert Enlarge, also I think not really a great card. It can be difficult to play more than 2, 3 large animals in a game. It's just hard to A, find the space on your map, and B, find the time to get your build all the way up to 5 and build those large enclosures. On top of other enclosures you may want to build for small animals. So it just takes a lot of time to set up playing a lot of large animals, and so there's limited value you can get out of this. So when you play it for the appeal, you may get 2 or 4, which is not that great. If you're playing it for future animal plays, you may get this discount 2 or 3 times. Again, not super impactful. It can be nice if you've got an aviary. That does solve some of the tempo problems in having to build lots of enclosures. If you can just fit multiple large animals into an aviary, that's something that can help you get a lot more value out of this. But otherwise, it's just too difficult to play a lot of large animals to get a lot of value out of this. Versus Expert in Small Animals, I think is a pretty solid card just because it is much easier to play a lot more small animals. The 2-size Project War bonus can help you get a lot of small enclosures down. If you upgrade builds, you can get multiple enclosures down in a single build action, and so the opportunity to play a lot of small animals and get that 3 money discount multiple times is much higher. And on top of the fact that the discount is much more impactful here, right? So for a large animal, getting a 4 money discount off a, say 20 cost animal, that's a 20% discount. Vice, small animals, 3 money discount on a 6 cost animal, that's a 50% discount. Much more impactful for the efficiency of money per points that this is enabling for you. Then you have your continental sponsors. Expert in Africa, I think, is quite good. If you remember from my animal sponsors, I rate the clever ability quite high. I think that is really good for excelling your game, although it does not earn you points. X tokens, I think, is kind of an awkward end game. Usually I'm using X tokens to try to end my game as fast as possible, but then this makes you pause and think, it's like, well, do I want to hold on to a couple extra ones for a couple extra points? And so it makes for some interesting endgame calculations to think about. Expert in Asia, I think my pick for most overrated sponsor. I think I saw another sponsor video that had it in S tier, and I don't get that at all. I think most games, typical, you're gonna see maybe 3 Asia tags on average. So this will get you 4 appeal, which is decent. It certainly has a higher ceiling than that, but I think in most cases that's about what you're going to get out of it. The pavilions are okay. They can help you fill out spots next to kiosks, get you a little bit more income, but I don't think that's a huge impact. I think the highest upside of this is if it fits into a map fill animals action, playing an animal, Asian animal, as your last move to place a pavilion to fill up that last spot to get that extra map fill bonus, I think can enable a big endgame move. But those games are kind of uncommon. That's not going to happen all the time. I also think it's pretty uncommon. You're going to have games where you're getting 6, 7 tags, which gets you 7, 8 appeal out of this card, which is good, but it's not that common. I think most cases you're getting 3, 4, and if you really think this is an S tier card you need to snap all the time, there's going to be games where you get 1 or 2 Asia tags, and so this is only getting you 2 or 3 appeal, which is really not that good. So there you have it. That's my pick for overrated card. Expert on Australia, it gets you points. So I think in terms of generating appeal, I think it's pretty similar to Expert in Asia. The pouch gets you 2 appeal when you play a tag, and I would say I can probably make use of that pouch 50% of the time. So it's probably generating similar appeal, if not for the fact that there are less Australia tags in the deck, and I'm less likely to play Australia tags, so it does get hurt in that respect. Expert in Europe, I'd say probably the worst of the experts here. It can be nice early game if you have some one-size animals in hand. This is a cute way to get out a one-size enclosure without having to do that sad build one size with your build action move. Expert in Americas, also I think is just okay. Um, I don't love getting a ton of kiosks. Explore. This is the first one I think I'll put in an S tier here. I'd say this card can be super impactful if you play it early. It's just got so much potential for generating a lot of money and a lot of appeal over the course of the game. And if you get a lot of releases, double dipping on tags as well. I mean, this can be huge in just solving your money problems. And just generating a lot of appeal along the way. Federal grants, I think, is pretty solid. The science tag is nice for enabling other science cards that may need it. Archaeologist, breeding program, you see those up there. And instant 3 money is pretty good in the early game. Its end game is very easy to hit. 3 income throughout the game, solid all around. That's 3/5 of a project award pretty much right there. But I don't think it's powerful enough that it's really having a huge impact in deciding whether you're going to win the game or not, really. So I don't think I'm going to put this higher than A tier. Foreign Institute is all right. I think its best use case is in your opening hand if it contributes to a line that rushes you up the reputation track very fast to either get a round 1 upgrade or your round 2 worker from the 8 reputation. I think that can be quite useful. The continent diversity endgame is a little bit harder than a species diversity endgame to hit, but not the most difficult endgame, but also not a shoe-in to get all the time. Guerrilla field research can be quite good if you have the science tag synergies going. But 3 science tags is kind of a steep requirement, not always going to get use out of it, but a solid 1 conservation point, 2 reputation. That's decent value. I would say probably similar to the playgrounds, but the fact that it is just harder to play and get use out of knocks it down a bit. Guided school tours, I think it's a pretty good card. 1 conservation point, 1 appeal off the bat, 4 points, pretty solid, and then a very easy endgame points to achieve makes this a fairly reliable 7-point card, which is awesome to get out of a 3 strength sponsor. On top of the fact, if you get this in your opener, if you can combo that 1 conservation point with something else that gives you a conservation point. Nothing on the board yet here, but maybe Zoo School or Shoebill, Secretary Bird, something like that. Can enable some interesting plays where you get two conservation points really quickly and either take a worker or an early upgrade. And so that can make for some interesting plays as well. Migration recording, I think very powerful, but also situational. It makes it so that if you get some release projects on the board, you may be able to just totally start ignoring the base projects or do a mix of both. Really, it kind of enables that you have, in some cases, almost an endless stream of conservation projects you're able to support, which gives you a lot of power to accelerate your game, just constantly being able to do projects and getting extra value out of those projects as well. As I've said in previous videos, releases are very powerful projects already, and this makes them even better. Then we've got the native cards. I think these can be quite good if you find them before their 25 appeal limit. I think connecting all the rock spots is not all that difficult, and so you can fairly consistently get 6, 7, 8 appeal out of these, which is very solid to be getting out of your sponsor's play. And if you plan ahead too, if you find yourself in a game where you don't need to be building a ton, thinking about isolating those extra rock spots for a conservation point too, can push this into the 10 plus points territory as well. Same thing with native seabirds. I would have to check. I don't know off the top of my head if maps typically make it easier for the rock or the water connections or isolations, but I think it's a fairly similar up in value there. On top of the fact that they have animal tags, that may help with base conservation projects, diversity projects. So that can be a good reason to keep these as well. Then you have the free range New World monkeys. I think, unlike these two, it's much more difficult to score points off of this one. Also, the way it scores points is counterintuitive to what you want to be doing. Going adjacent to a placement bonus, but not actually taking it. You want to be taking placement bonuses early game so you can get those resources so you can use that to accelerate your game further. But to purposefully not take them is going to slow you down. Same deal with the end game. Just not purposefully not taking bonus resources is not good for your game. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got Native Farm. I think this goes up in S tier. It does take a bit of planning around, but I think it is very reasonable through the course of the game to connect 6-7 border spaces and then leaving open 6-12 open areas in the game to get another 3 or 6 appeal. So I think this card very consistently can get you 10 plus points. And if you plan really well or you get lots of releases, you can go real hard on ruining your map and leaving open spaces and score, 12, 13 appeal off the bat, or leaving a lot of open spaces to get 3, 4, 5 conservation points out of the end game. So this has the upside of scoring 20 plus points, which is insane. But I think really what keeps it in S tier is the consistency of being able to score 10 plus points for this card. But it is a balancing act of how much are you willing to sacrifice your map to gain those points. But still, the amount of points that you can consistently get, earns its place up in S tier. And you have Quarantine Lab, which I think is just okay. Continent diversity, not the greatest endgame, but is achievable. At the very least, it gets you an X token, so it's no worse than Xing back the sponsor's action, even if you don't make use of it. If you're playing a friendly game, this card's absolutely useless. Obviously, it's not protecting you from anything, but the science tag does enable science plays. So I know if you watch my Emo Cup games, my series against JD in the quarterfinals, this card was played quite a lot. But I think more often it was because I think my opponent had a science package going on, and so I just felt I needed to deny it. And if it's in my hand and I have no better sponsors to play, and I'm in a position to be taking things slow, it's an okay card to throw out. And you have release of patents. I think can be quite good in certain situations. It is something I definitely think about when I see it in my opening hand all the time. It can make it worth it to grab the double science uni to get a quick 2 conservation points for either an upgrade or a worker. So those can make for some interesting plays. Or if you find a little bit later in the mid game, before you hit that 25 appeal cutoff, getting 2 or 3 conservation points is solid value out of a sponsor play. 6 or 9 points. I think it's pretty decent. Science Institute. Really, it's just for enabling your other cards that need science tags or animals. The double tag can be nice if you have a science engine going, spokesperson or science museum getting you appeal or not appeal, reputation or conservation points. Doubling up on that can be nice, but it's really just too dependent on other cards. By itself does not generate any value. Science Lab, I'll put this up in S tier. I think especially if you are higher up in the reputation track, this is just as good, maybe better than the snapping project reward. Especially if you have the reputation track maxed out, you can choose to draw from deck, not forced to take from the display. So that can be a little bit better than snapping in some situations. All right, it goes up in S tier because it gives you those similar benefits as the Snapping Project Reward, which is, one of the more powerful project rewards. You can have just being able to have that control over the display is very powerful, and increasing your hand quality throughout the game is quite nice. And then the potential for 2 conservation points as an end game is pretty powerful as well. You have Science Library is a pretty good card. The diverse species endgame is fairly easy to hit. 2 money per science tag, fairly solid, especially at higher player counts where your opponents can feed you money as well. And if you have a big science engine going, this can be a great amount of points towards the end of the game. Games where you have 8, 9, 10 science tags and then drop this at the end for 10 appeal plus another 3 points for that game can be a pretty impactful card. You have Medical Breakthrough. It can be nice if you can meet the requirements, but the problem is, its requirements are fairly difficult, so you're not going to be getting it down super early. So, that 1 CP income looks nice on paper, but it's probably going to be a bit late before you're getting that. So you may only see 1 or 2 breaks of getting that income, which is on par with, I don't know, Release of Patents, which gets you 2 or 3 if you have a couple of science going. Um, which is just okay, but then just being harder to play. But it does get you 2 appeal per project played. So if you've got a project heavy game going and you have the science tags to enable it, this can get you a decent chunk of appeal on top of that. Then you have Science Museum, I think is the more impactful card of the Medical Breakthrough. Um, again, the 4 science tag can make it more difficult to play, but it does synergize with itself. At a minimum, you're going to get a 10 money refund. So this is great for surprising your opponent when they think you have nothing left to do in the round. Drop a card like this and get an extra 10 money, and all of a sudden you're having effective actions again. Can be a good surprise, on top of the fact that this is going to start earning you 3 points per science tag played in the future. So I think this is really the key card for getting a powerful science engine going in your game. You have Side Entrance. I used to think this was the best card in the game when I first started playing because I thought Income was so powerful. But as I've improved, I've started to really think Income is overrated, just because of the way the brake mechanic works in this game. You run out of money, just push the brake and you'll get more money. It's not a set thing that everyone has to wait for. And so it does have some nice combos. If you get Engineer or a card like a Scarlet Macaw, that's going to get you a bunch of kiosks and pavilions to surround this in round one. Pushing your income to 20 plus in round one can be huge, but it can be countered really, because when you have income that high, your opponent can upgrade sponsors themselves and just keep breaking with it, and then they're on par with you with pretty much having unlimited money to do what you want, and so that kind of nullifies the effect of big income strategies. Then you have Spokesperson. I would just put this down in B tier. It can be a solid piece of a science engine, earning you reputation, but by itself, I don't think it's just that impactful. Reputation doesn't score you points, but it can be nice as an early game combo. Throwing this down as your first sponsor after grabbing the 1 science 2 rep uni to rush up the reputation track, get a quick upgrade, maybe get a quick worker in round 2. So it has its uses. Then you have the sponsorship animal cards. Like I said, I don't rate income all that highly in this game. So I think this can be a bait, because you see 3, 6, 9 income, that's a lot of money. But I feel like these fall into the category of, playing a sponsor for the sake of playing a sponsor. I think in most cases, if you're playing them, you have maybe 2 or 3 tags, so getting 2 or 3 appeal is just okay. If you're playing in the min game, how many breaks really are left that you're getting this income bonus? You're not getting any immediate money, so it's not helping you right away. If you're playing this for an 6 income, but there's only 1 break left. Um, you know, how often do you find yourself in the final break actually in a position to spend exactly all of your money? So did you really need that 6 money? Oftentimes I find the case is a no. Then we've got, and just the order, same reason as the other animal tags. Predators, because of high compound, just helps you draw into more predators. Birds for perception, scavenging reasons the same. Herbivores because I think it's stronger than reptiles and primates because there's just fewer of them. Then you got Tech Institute, I think another S tier card here. I think getting a lot of X tokens just gives you so much control over the action order. If you're in a position where you need to be the one pushing the brake because your opponent has a worker advantage or an income advantage, having those X tokens to just cards, break 7, do some actions, cards, break 7, do some more actions, this just keeps feeding you X tokens to keep on doing that and pushing the pace of the game very fast. Or can be useful for other plays if you want to say if you have a big worker advantage and you upgrade association, you can use that all those excess X tokens to do multiple association actions. Grab a partner zoo in a university, grab a partner zoo and do a project. It gives you a lot of flexibility. So I think that is very powerful. Veterinarian, I think it does have quite a bit of upside if you have a lot of projects to do, but that's kind of situational. It can be hard to read when you're going to make good use out of it. It certainly is quite nice if you have an upgraded association game. Like I was just talking with the Tech Institute, if you have a lot of X tokens, this makes it easier to do those multi-association actions. A project on top of something else. And if it is a game or map where you want to grab a lot of universities, particularly if you grab 3, a 10 money boost in the middle of a round can have a huge impact. Like I was saying with the Science Museum, if your opponent thinks they don't need to press the break because you've run out of money, and then all of a sudden you got a 10 money coming in, that can be a pretty big impact in the game. We've got victory column. I like it a bit better than the arcade, particularly if you get it down early. Pumping out an extra appeal every round, I think, can be quite nice. But this is only going to get you so much appeal, so I don't think it's hugely impactful for your game. Again, more victory columns was just the same. Was a large, can be nice. I don't know, put it bottom of B plus. Yeah, it can have its situations where you're essentially trading a sponsor's action to get down another 5 size. And so that can be kind of scary when you see your opponent drop one of those. All of a sudden they have an extra 5 size enclosure. You can drop some big point bombs in there, and this just enables being able to play them easier. Siberian Tiger needs one less Asia tag. Lion doesn't need as many predator tags. Um, you know, so it gives you more options for big plays towards the end of the game, which is quite nice. As a small animal program, I'm not big on this card really. Sure, being able to snap a small animal from display can be nice to get more cards in your hand. But for the most part, I don't think there's a lot of small animals, even if they match base projects, are all that snap-worthy. So you may be able to just let those things slide down the display anyways and just play them from range with an upgraded animals action, I think. So I don't think this earns you a ton. The money is okay, I guess. But I find the ability of being able to play 3 animals in one move can be pretty hard to set up as well. Just planning ahead to have that many enclosures available, having that much money to be able to do that can be difficult. But it can be very powerful if you combo it with other small animal enhancers, such as Expert and Small, that can help you to afford all those animals. And as we'll talk about in a moment, Wazza Special, that can become very powerful combo as well. So we have Wazza Special. I'll put this up in A+. I think this can often turn your game around. Most of the most common thing in the deck is small animals. Let's see, I think it was 60% of the deck is animal cards, and I think half of those are small animals. No, half of those are 1 and 2 size animals. Then you've got another 10 petting zoos, so more than half of the animals are small animals. And so it can be scary to say, I can't play large animals anymore, but the reality is small animals are so common that you are going to get a ton of value getting an extra 2 appeal for every small animal you play. So, um, regardless of what projects you have on the board, this is just going to generate a ton of appeal for you if you play it early enough. And then, if you're getting towards the end of the game, the specialize in large can be nice as well. If you've already got those 1 or 2 large enclosures already set up, you've got an aviary, and so you've only got 2 or 3 large animals left to play to close out the game, an extra 8 or 12 appeal. Just from those 2 or 3 triggers can be a pretty big boost towards the end of the game as well if you want to do the large. And then it can also, draw you that big point bomb you need at the end of the game as well. So yeah, I think that can be a pretty impactful card. And then lastly, we have Zoo School. Again, I think this goes up. I'll put this up in A+. Either the reputation or the conservation point, I think gives you some good flexibility. Early game, combo with other conservation points, like I said earlier, to get a quick upgrade or worker can be good, or rush up the reputation track. The fact that it places building on the map helps you gather some placement bonuses, and then also can help you draw from display, right? So if there's a nice card in folder 1, folder 2, particularly folder 2, you can, snap that up in the first move with this card, which can be quite nice. And so there you have it, my sponsors tier list. Thanks for watching.